Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I'd like to return to a topic that hasn't reared its head for a while, but I suppose was always inevitable. One of the main hard Brexit cheerleaders, Daniel Moylan, is suggesting a couple of things. First, that the only problems we're having with Brexit can reasonably be termed bumps. In other words, fairly minor and temporary. And second, that even those bumps would be in our rear view mirror if we left the EU without any deal at all. Okay then. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So before I get onto the Baron's assertion, I'm actually going to have a pop at some Remainers first. As soon as Brexit showed itself to be an undeniable disaster, this was always going to happen. Even the majority of people who still support Brexit think it's going badly. If you look at polling, there's genuine division in the country still about whether Brexit was a good idea or not, or whether it can be made to work or not. The only overwhelming Brexit opinion in this country right now is that it's going badly. But the Brexiteers cannot claim that this is inevitable or that the Remainers were right. So they have to blame the way we did it. But many don't want to admit that the way we did it was too hard. Some are. There are some that are saying, actually, maybe we shouldn't have left the single market. But for the likes of Moylan, they have to argue it wasn't hard enough. And how can you get a harder Brexit than one we ended up with? A no-deal Brexit. Literally a no-deal Brexit's the only way. I'm also going to say the strategic benefit in backing a no-deal Brexit if you're a supporter of this project. See, the problem with supporting a form of Brexit that can be implemented is that when it is implemented and it goes wrong, you look foolish. Oh, you said it'd be brilliant if we did this, and it didn't go brilliantly. I don't doubt there are aspects of Brexit that Moylan doesn't understand, but I don't think he's a fool. I suspect he understands that there is zero way that even our hard Brexit Parliament would ever go for a complete no-deal Brexit. Some are still pushing for it. Some are still thinking if we destroy the Northern Ireland Protocol, the EU will have to collapse the Trading Cooperation Agreement, which is correct, and that Parliament will somehow allow all this to happen. It won't. So it's an ideal position to adopt for a Brexit con artist because nobody will ever see what it means in reality because Parliament isn't insane. Even the Tories aren't insane enough to go for this. But when we agreed the Trade and Cooperation Agreement at the end of 2020, there were several prominent Remainers attacked the deal, said it was a bad deal. It wasn't a bad deal. There's nothing in the deal that is bad. What was bad about the deal is that it was too weak. There are things in our agreements with Australia and New Zealand that you could say are bad because we're conceding greater access to our market than we're getting into theirs. It's too one-sided and not in our favour as the larger market. The deal undermines whole sectors of our economy, especially farming, without any benefits to compensate. But the EU deal is just diluted. It's just weak. The problems that we're having from Brexit are not because of the deal, but because of what wasn't in the deal. Not a single Remainer who criticised the deal was able to point to me a single line that they could identify as a problem. What they were identifying as a problem were the blank pages that didn't have anything on it. But by making their arguments, all they do now is allow Brexiteers who wanted the no-deal Brexit, or say they do, to say, look, even Remainers didn't like the deal, so we should have just left without one. If no one likes it, why didn't we? Because, the Remainers have a similar counter-argument. Given that everyone's saying Brexit's going badly, we like to say, well, given that Leavers think it's going badly and Remainers think it's going badly, why did we ever leave? Brexiteers have their alternative, which is to say, well, if neither side likes the deal, why did we even get a deal? Utter folly. But anyway, so let's look at this claim that we'd have no problem with Brexit if we had no deal at all. So let's consider 5 of the biggest problems as identified by the mainstream media. If the mainstream media talk about these issues, they must be huge. First problem, our exporters have to spend time and money filling in documentation to satisfy customs and standards procedures when trading with a different market. This isn't part of the Trading Cooperation Agreement. All the customs and standards documentation we have to fill in is not part of the deal we have with the EU. These are standard third country rules that apply to everyone around the world, trading with anyone else around the world with whom they don't have a special deal. We require it of countries importing to Britain, for example. Everywhere that imports into Britain has to have this documentation, just like we have to have this documentation to export anywhere else in the world. It's just that it didn't used to apply to Europe. The result of this extra documentation is that our businesses have higher costs. That means less profit being made. So that means less money going to the UK Treasury. If the business can't absorb these costs, it means higher costs for the customers because they have to pass it on. But being that those customers are in the EU, they may look around and go, well, actually, I can now get these goods cheaper from elsewhere in the continental-wide single market and just stop using their British supplier. That also leads to lost revenue and lost UK taxes. This documentation would still be needed without the deal, only the costs would be higher because everything would have tariffs applied on top of everything else. I suppose at least you wouldn't have to worry about filling in your rules of origin documentation. But that's because you would be paying the extra regardless. Second problem is the delays at our ports. So from time to time you see in the media that the delays are particularly bad, but it's worth pointing out they're always bad. There are two main sources of delay at our largest ports in Kent. The first is at the lorry park, where the government hide most of the problem from the media, who are quite adept at turning a blind eye. And the second is the approach to the port itself, on the roads. That's harder to hide. There's cameras there apart from anything else. Now, the delay at Dover, if you're passing to Calais, is typically about 2 hours. Now, that is more than the delay you'd have expected routinely before Brexit, so it still represents a delay. But it's nothing at all compared to the delay at the lorry park. That's where they hide the worst of it. This is typically about 11 hours. So the normal waiting time at the lorry park is about 11 hours. So trucks trying to export our goods, if they want to pass to Calais, typically find themselves stuck for 13 hours just doing nothing, over and above the time it used to take. And if there's something wrong with any of the documentation, of course, much longer, because you're not getting through until it's right. But right now, the median delay at the lorry park is 39 hours. Not seeing that on the news, are you? No, and you won't. 39 hours, that's the average wait time. And that's not considered particularly newsworthy. That means lorry drivers are stuck. Well, some will be stuck much longer because that's the median, but they're stuck basically for almost 2 full days just trying to get through Kent. And that doesn't even take account of how long they may have been stuck doing nothing at all at the warehouse while they've got their stuff loaded on, but they're waiting for all the extra documentation. Because there are no public records of that. I've got no idea how long they're stuck at warehouses. Again, nothing to do with the deal. It's not a part of the deal that we have to do all this. It's being a third country. It would still be there without the deal. Third, the difficulty, aside from lorry drivers, just for travellers to get off our sheeple-infested plague island. Whether on business or for holiday, leisure, whatever, there's been a noticeable delay in getting out of here since Brexit. We haven't even seen the worst of it yet. When the biometric checks are mandated at some point, we'll really know about it. Especially at seaports, because you don't have e-gates there at the moment. There's also a consequence of being a third country. Not something that was detailed in the agreement. We're not stuck there because of the agreement. We're stuck there because of a lack of agreement. Fourth, should we talk about fishing? The no-deal Brexiteers may like to say that if we had no agreement, we wouldn't have had to allow the non-British fishermen, particularly the French fishermen, into our waters to fish. Maybe not. But let's look at the consequence of that. First of all, before we left the EU, only about half of the fishermen on British fishing vessels were British anyway. We didn't actually have enough fishermen to fulfill our own quotas in our own waters. So the only way to give British fishing vessels more of the quota, and these people like to say all of the quota, would be to hire more foreign fishermen and women. The other thing to consider is, where are we going to sell this catch? We're going to land more fish, right? Where are we going to sell it? We need to export the vast majority of our catch. We only buy so much fish here. Without a deal with the EU, we wouldn't be selling it to Europe. Not at all. Not a single kipper. Several EU governments of fishing nations, especially the French, would block it. And the French fishermen, who have nothing else to do, would happily blockade the ports against British fishing vessels trying to land there. So British fishermen would be even more screwed without a deal. And 5, when people like Moylan talk about the deal with the EU, they don't just mean the trade and cooperation agreement, of course. They mean the withdrawal agreement. This includes the Northern Ireland Protocol, which has allowed Northern Ireland to retain access to the single market for goods. It's the reason why Northern Ireland was the only part of the UK to emerge from the economic hit of COVID last year, along with the other countries, the other advanced economies. Other G7 countries all managed it, all of them, just not the UK. Not sure why. Apparently it's got absolutely nothing to do with Brexit. So it must just be a coincidence that all of the G7 nations that didn't go through Brexit all recovered, that the one part of the UK that didn't undergo a hard Brexit also bounced back economically. But seriously, without that deal, Northern Ireland would be as screwed as the rest of the UK economically and much worse off politically. And this is what's important to remember. There are myriad problems with Brexit. Not one of them can be traced to a single line in any of the agreements we've got. They're all down to the fact that we're having to follow third country rules with our closest and largest export market. Third country rules are for those where there is no agreement. You don't agree to third country rules. It's the default position when you don't have a wider agreement. The reason why countries want trade deals is to lessen or ideally eliminate those third country status rules. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.